There is a reason most people choose comfort over truth. A reason they cling to illusions, even when they suspect they are lies. The truth is not warm. It does not comfort you at night or whisper that everything will be fine. The truth, as Friedrich Nietzsche knew, is a blade, and if you hold it long enough, it cuts into you. Nietzsche understood something most philosophers only hinted at. Human beings are not naturally built to endure the full weight of reality. We survive by telling ourselves stories about meaning, about morality, about the way things are supposed to be. These stories act like shelter, protecting us from the raw winds of existence. But there are a dangerous few, who decide to step outside that shelter and face the storm. Nietzsche was one of them, and he warned that anyone who does the same must be prepared to pay the price. The first price is isolation. Once you start to see the world without its comforting myths, you also start to see how few people want to follow you there. You notice the conversations you can no longer have, the company you can no longer keep. You begin to feel a distance, growing between you and the rest of the world, a silent gap that widens every time you open your mouth to speak the truth. The second price is burden. The illusions you once believed in used to carry you. They made the world seem manageable. Without them, you carry everything yourself. The weight of existence, the absurdity of suffering, the indifference of the universe, they all rest on your shoulders now. Nietzsche compared this to standing on a mountain peak. The view is vast and breathtaking, but the air is thin, and there is no one up there to help you breathe. And then there is the third price, the one that breaks most: people responsibility. Because once you see the truth, you can no longer hide behind excuses. You can no longer blame the gods, fate, or society for your life. Every choice, every mistake, every failure is yours. And the moment you try to hand that responsibility back, you will feel the crushing dishonor of betraying yourself. Nietzsche believed that facing the truth was a kind of death, the death of who you thought you were. The comforting version of you, the one who believed in easy answers and clear rules, has to die. What replaces it is uncertain, unstable, and often terrifying. You are reborn into a world where nothing is guaranteed and every value must be created from scratch. That is why he spoke so often of the abyss. The abyss is not some external hell. It is the empty space inside you when the old beliefs collapse. When you stare into it, you are staring into a life without inherited meaning. And Nietzsche warned, the abyss will stare back. It will ask you what you plan to put there instead. If you have no answer, the abyss will answer for you, and you may not like what it decides. For Nietzsche, truth was not a comfortable possession you could keep in your pocket and take out when it suited you. It was a force, dangerous, beautiful, and utterly indifferent to your survival. To stand in its presence was to be stripped bare of all the lies you once told yourself. And in that nakedness, you would discover what you truly are, if you could endure it. Most can't. Most retreat into the safety of the herd, where beliefs are shared, responsibilities are spread thin, and no one is expected to ask questions that hurt. Nietzsche had no contempt for these people, only pity, because he knew that when the shelter of illusions eventually collapses, as it always does, they will be utterly unprepared for the cold. He spoke of the Übermensch, the overman, not as a fantasy of superiority, but as a necessity. The overman is the one who can bear the truth without being crushed by it, who can live without illusions and still choose to create meaning rather than sink into despair. But becoming that person demands sacrifice, and sacrifice always has a cost. If you are thinking about facing the truth in your own life, ask yourself this: are you ready to give up the comforts you have built around your fears? Are you ready to stand on that mountain peak alone, knowing no one is coming to save you? Are you ready to be responsible for everything, even the parts of life you hate? Because if you are not ready, the truth will break you. Nietzsche did not want followers. He wanted creators, people strong enough to look into the void and then choose to build something beautiful inside it. But strength is not given, it is forged in struggle. The forge is the truth, and the hammer is the pain you will endure while holding on to it. If you let go, you lose not only the truth, you lose yourself. And so the question becomes, will you pay the price? Will you walk past the comfort of the crowd and step into the wind? Or will you turn away, close your eyes, and pretend the blade was never in your hand? Nietzsche would tell you, you already know the answer. You just have to be brave enough to admit it. The moment you decide to face the truth, something inside you begins to fracture. At first, it's subtle, a faint crack in the foundation of your beliefs. But as Nietzsche warned, once the crack is there, it will spread. The truth does not politely knock and wait to be invited in. It pushes, it pries, it tears down walls you thought were unshakable. This is the first mechanism of transformation, the collapse of inherited values. You grew up with ideas of right and wrong, good and evil, meaning and purpose. They were given to you by family, culture, religion, and society. You accepted them because everyone around you did. But when you begin to question them, really question them, you discover they are not absolute laws of the universe. They are agreements, convenient fictions that make life livable. When this realization hits, most people panic. The human mind craves stability, and when the old structures fall, it feels like the ground is disappearing under your feet. This is where Nietzsche saw the greatest danger, not in the collapse itself, but in what you choose to do next. Without the old values, there is a vacuum, and vacuums always fill themselves. If you do not consciously create new values, something else will rush in to take their place. Fanaticism, nihilism, or the comforting chains of a new belief system just as rigid as the one you escaped. The second mechanism is confrontation with the absurd. Once the old meanings are gone, you are faced with a simple, brutal fact. Life has no built-in purpose. The universe does not care whether you succeed or fail, live or die, love or despair. This is the moment when many break. Without a divine plan or cosmic justice to lean on, the temptation to give up entirely is strong. Nietzsche called this the sickness that comes after the death of God. Not the death of a deity in the literal sense, but the death of the certainty that there is an ultimate authority guiding everything. The third mechanism is the rise of the self as creator. This is where transformation becomes possible, but it is also where the risk is highest. Because to create your own values, your own meaning, you must first believe you are capable of doing so. And belief in yourself, genuine belief, not the shallow optimism of motivational slogans, is rare. Most people have spent their lives outsourcing meaning to institutions, leaders, or traditions. To take that power back is exhilarating, but it is also terrifying because there is no one left to blame if you fail. Nietzsche compared this stage to walking a tightrope. On one side lies despair, on the other, arrogance. If you fall to despair, you stop creating and sink into the void. If you fall to arrogance, you mistake your temporary creations for eternal truths and become as rigid as those you once rejected. The only way forward is to keep walking, to keep creating and destroying, shaping and reshaping, never allowing your ideas to fossilize. And this leads to the fourth mechanism, eternal recurrence. Nietzsche's thought experiment was simple but ruthless. Imagine you had to live this exact life with all its pain and joy over and over for eternity. Could you embrace it? Not endure it, not tolerate it, embrace it. This is the ultimate test of whether you have truly faced the truth. If you recoil at the thought, it means you are still living in a way you cannot fully accept. If you can say yes to it, then you have reached the rare state Nietzsche described as amor fati, love of one's fate. But here is the deadly part of facing the truth. The process has no end. The destruction of illusions is not a one-time event. New illusions will creep in, old habits will return, comfort will whisper in your ear, and each time, you must decide again whether to face the blade or turn away. This is why Nietzsche believed so few survive the journey. It is not the initial shock that kills them. It is the slow erosion of will over time. Anyone can be brave for a moment. The real challenge is to be brave every day, to keep choosing the mountain peak over the safety of the valley. Facing the truth is like standing in front of a mirror that shows not only your reflection, but every possible version of yourself. The coward, the tyrant, the saint, the fool. You realize you could be any of them. And then you must choose, not once, but constantly, who you will be. This is the weight of freedom. It does not liberate you from responsibility. It magnifies it. Nietzsche saw this as both a curse and a blessing. A curse because most will not bear it. A blessing because those who can will live lives of a depth and intensity the sheltered can never imagine. But he never pretended it was easy. The path to the truth is lined with the bones of those who started the climb and turned back, or worse, fell and never rose again. The question that remains is whether you are willing to endure not just the first wound, but the 1,000 small cuts that follow. Whether you can stand the weight of knowing that no one is coming to tell you what life means, that it is yours to define or to waste. Nietzsche's challenge was not to those who wanted comfort, but to those who wanted to live fully, dangerously, and without apology. Because in the end, facing the truth is not about finding answers. It is about becoming the kind of person who can live without them. Once you begin living by the truth, you will notice something you could not see before: the hostility of the herd. It will not always come as open aggression. Often it will be disguised as concern, advice, or quiet exclusion. Nietzsche understood this dynamic well. Society has a deep, instinctive suspicion toward those who live without its illusions. The herd's survival depends on shared beliefs. These beliefs function like invisible walls, keeping people inside a common reality. Anyone who steps outside those walls is a threat, not because they wield force, but because they reveal that the walls are not real. And when you reveal that the walls are not real, you do not just unsettle the herd. You make them feel naked in the open air. Nietzsche often warned that the truth-teller would be seen as dangerous, even insane. When you speak the truth, you are not simply offering new information. You are challenging the foundations upon which others have built their lives. They will protect those foundations as if their lives depend on it, because in a way, they do. You will notice how conversations shift when you speak plainly. A joke to avoid discomfort, a change of subject, a subtle distancing, as if your presence carries a weight too heavy for casual interaction. And eventually you will be left out entirely, not because people hate you, but because you disturb the fragile balance of their illusion. Nietzsche knew this exile well. He spent much of his life alone, writing for an audience that did not yet exist. His books sold poorly, his ideas were dismissed or misunderstood, and his health deteriorated. But he never traded the truth for acceptance. He considered the solitude a price worth paying, even if it meant being forgotten in his own time. The psychological cost is harder to measure. Humans are social animals. We are wired to seek belonging. When you live by the truth, you deliberately step into a position of permanent outsider. You will crave the comfort of the herd, even as you despise its illusions. This tension can tear you apart if you are not prepared for it. Nietzsche's answer to this was not to harden yourself into an emotionless stone, but to create your own circle, however small, of those who share your commitment to truth. Not followers, not disciples, but equals. People who can stand on their own peaks without demanding that you come down from yours. These connections are rare, but they are vital, because they prove you are not entirely alone in the wilderness. The you. Social reaction to truth-tellers also has a darker side: active suppression. History is littered with those who spoke too plainly and paid with their reputations, their freedom, or their lives. The more dangerous the illusion you expose, the more vicious the backlash. Nietzsche warned that if you choose this path, you must not only be ready to be misunderstood, you must be ready to be deliberately misrepresented. The herd will twist your words into something that justifies their rejection of you. But here is the paradox Nietzsche loved. The more you are rejected by the herd, the freer you become. Every bridge they burn behind you is a path you can no longer take back to comfort. This forces you deeper into the wilderness, deeper into yourself, until there is no turning back. And in that exile, if you endure it, you find a kind of sovereignty that no social approval can match. Living according to the truth also reshapes your inner world. You stop measuring your worth by how others see you. Praise loses its sweetness, and criticism loses its sting. Your compass becomes internal, not external. Nietzsche called this self-overcoming, the act of constantly refining yourself according to your own highest standard, rather than bending to the will of the crowd. But self-overcoming is a brutal discipline. There is no applause, no guarantee of success. You may work for years on a vision no one else believes in. You may die before anyone understands what you were trying to build, and you must accept that possibility without bitterness. The herd's rejection will tempt you to soften your edges, to compromise just enough to be accepted again. Nietzsche would tell you this is the moment of greatest danger, not when they attack you, but when they offer you a way back in. Because the moment you dilute the truth to make it more palatable, it ceases to be the truth. It becomes another illusion, and you become its prisoner. And yet, for those who endure the exile, something remarkable happens. You stop needing the herd's protection. You no longer feel the cold of the mountain air because you have learned to generate your own warmth. You stop fearing the abyss because you have already looked into it and returned. This is the transformation. Nietzsche sought not comfort, not security, but the unshakable strength of someone who has survived the death of all their illusions. It is a life without guarantees, without the safety net of inherited meaning. But it is also a life without chains. Nietzsche's final test for those who claim to live in truth is not found in philosophy books, nor in the admiration of others. It is found in the silence of your own mind when no one is watching and the night is long. This is when the question of eternal recurrence returns, not as a thought experiment, but as a mirror you cannot avoid. Imagine it again. This life you are living now. The mistakes, the victories, the moments of ecstasy, the hours of despair. Repeating endlessly. Every conversation, every heartbreak, every small triumph. Not for 10 years, not for 100, forever. This is where most people break, even those who thought they had faced the truth. Because to say yes to this is to say yes to every part of yourself you would rather forget. It is to accept not only your choices, but your failures, your flaws, and your shame as necessary components of your existence. Nietzsche's challenge here is absolute. There is no halfway answer. You either embrace your fate entirely, or you reject it. If you reject it, you have not yet conquered the deepest fear, the fear that your life is not worth living unless it can be edited, unless you can erase the parts that hurt, the moments you regret. But the truth offers no editing tools. The truth demands that you see your life whole, without cutting the ugly parts out of the frame. To pass this test, you must stop negotiating with reality. You must stop saying, "I could love my life if only this had been different." This conditional acceptance is the signature of those who still live in illusion. Amor fati, love of fate, means not just bearing the weight of your life, but carrying it with pride, as if it were the most precious treasure you could possess. Living in this way changes the texture of time. You stop rushing toward some imagined better future and start inhabiting the present as if it is eternal, because, in a sense, it is. Every moment becomes heavier, but also richer. Even suffering takes on a strange beauty, because it is no longer something you need to escape. It is simply part of the shape of your life. This acceptance does not make you passive. Nietzsche despised passivity. Loving your fate does not mean surrendering to it. It means working with it, shaping it, bending it where you can, but never denying it. It is the stance of a warrior who does not choose the battlefield, but chooses how to fight. When you reach this stage, you will find that the world no longer holds the same power over you. The opinions of others become faint echoes. Fear loses much of its bite. And even death, which once stood as the ultimate interruption, becomes just another turn in the infinite wheel. But here is the paradox Nietzsche left us with. The moment you are ready to live your life again and again, you no longer need to. The fear of wasting time vanishes because every moment, however fleeting, is complete in itself. This is freedom not as escape, but as presence. Of course, very few ever arrive here. The price is too high. It demands too much stripping away of illusions, too much solitude, too much confrontation with one's own darkness. Most people will choose instead the comfort of partial truths, enough to feel enlightened, but not enough to be truly free. Nietzsche called them the last men, satisfied, safe, and utterly without depth. For those who endure, the journey does not end in peace, but in clarity. You see the world as it is, stripped of its costumes, and you see yourself as you are, stripped of excuses. You may still stumble, still feel fear, still make mistakes, but you no longer hide from them. You meet them head on, because they are yours. And perhaps that is the final truth Nietzsche wanted us to see, that the meaning of life is not something given, nor something found, but something forged, in the fire of your own will, with the hammer of your own hands, that you are not a passive witness to your fate, but its co-creator. The question, then, is not whether the truth will destroy you. It will. The question is whether you can survive the destruction and emerge as something new, something that does not need the comfort of illusions, something that can dance on the edge of the abyss without falling in. Because in the end, to live in, truth is not to be safe, but to be alive. And that, Nietzsche believed, is worth any price.